Howdy once again, as tubalcain, your YouTube shop teacher, continuing with the series on the LISLE drill grinder. And watch the last several episodes if you will, or this may not make any sense, but I'm now out in my fair weather foundry and I'm ready to make the first casting of the wheel guard. Now, it's May 5th and finally the weather had broken and I think spring is here for good. We had a terrible winter, not so severe and cold as it was just long, just 5 months without really a nice balmy day or that you could enjoy yourself. So let's get started. I've already got a 10 by 12 inch flask. Notice that the drag part is a 4 inch and the cope is a 3 inch. Now I've covered foundry so often, so many times, that I will not go through every step on how an actual casting is made. If you haven't seen this done, go ahead and watch some of my other videos that give the details. So I'm just going to ram this pattern up and cast it and pour it. But I'll run some of this in fast motion. Thanks for watching my videos and joining me. Hello, Myford boy over there in England, if you're watching this, and you're far better at this than what I am, but there's the pattern. I have marked it where I'm going to put the gates, but I'll put it in this way first so that I have room to cut those gates, which will be about like that. And I drilled some holes on that backside for the screw to withdraw it, so put a little powder on there. The pattern's pretty smooth. You saw me sand it repeatedly. This is Petrobond sand, and you know I love the smell of Petrobond in the morning. Excuse the gloves, but this sand is so messy and it just grinds the dirt into your, I should say sand, into the pores of my skin, so that's why I got gloves on. I have freshly mulled sand, mulled 30 seconds ago, 1/8 inch riddle. The Riddler. I'm the Riddler. Gives me a chance to pick the ladybugs out of the sand. They like to winter in the sand. You think the oil would kill them, but nothing kills them. Except when I smash them in my videos. You've seen me do that. Somebody called PETA on me. And there, it looks something like that. Now for the cope half. You might notice here that I chalked coordinates here for the sprues. Otherwise it's hard to remember sometimes where to cut those. Especially since I'm over 40. You only need enough fine sand to cover the pattern. Now you can see from the coordinates here about where the actual gate will be. I want to stay a little bit away from that. It helps me locate the pattern in there. I think I'll put a big old sprue on this side and a smaller one over here. That's a tapered cutter. The other one's just a piece of chrome plated brass from the hardware store. I like to have a little pouring basin. You can see the parting sand down there, so I know that I'm at the right depth, although that's no surprise because I got that sprue cutter marked as such. Now I will separate the cope from the drag. Actually, there's nothing in the cope, so this will open up easily. I lay that off to the side. And it looks something like this. Actually, it looks exactly like that. Now I'll cut the gates before I forget. And this gate really, well, it was supposed to go in here. And I want it to be nice and deep. Deep and wide. We used to sing a song called Deep and Wide in Sunday school. Raise your hand if you ever used to sing that or remember that. Yeah, I see a couple of you do. Now I'm ready to withdraw the pattern. Drum roll, if you please. Will the pattern withdraw? I hope so. I like to rattle it around. In a big foundry they'd have a vibrator, usually an air vibrator, on the match plates anyway. And I hope that did some good. Now I'm going to try to wiggle it just a little bit as I withdraw it and then straight up. I wish she's tight. Nope, little more wrapping. Starting to come. I don't see any sand left in there. I don't care about a little breakout like that, although I would prefer it if it didn't. I like to turn it upside down because there's bound to be some sand down there in the deep spot, so let me turn it upside down. See what falls out. And I'm going to blow it with the bellows right here while it's on its side. I think it's okay. Now I'm going to reassemble it. Always being careful that no sand falls in. Now, I'll see you in about an hour when I have the metal melted and ready to pour. And I'll just gush it right in here at about 1300 degrees. And here we go. And don't try this at home. Well, it's been 45 minutes or an hour since I poured this, so I think it's cool enough to open up. So let's have a drum roll. Oh, it is hot yet. There it is. It's looking pretty good. Let me cool it off, and I'll cut the gates off and go down to the basement and examine it for defects. Back in the basement, I cut the gates off. Not close yet, I'll do that later on. But let's do some examination here and see if there were any faults. I told you that this fell in a little bit here. So the pattern probably needed a little more relief right here, and I wish that I would have set, I'm almost wishing, the sander to 3 degrees in there just to increase that. I knew that would be a trouble spot, and it was, but if this was going into production and they were going to make thousands of them, of course changes would be made. Also, I'd been better off with fillet in here and here like I mentioned, but it's really just fine without it. When you see little cavities right there, that's where sand fell in or got washed in. No biggie, that'll be covered anyway with the plate. Very good on that side. So it's a successful casting, worth using, and it'll take very little cleanup, really. Also, I can see that in here it was a tough draw to pull the sand out of there, but nothing broke off. So my pattern making was okay. Now, there are two kinds of shrinkages. One is that in any thick spot, there will be a sinkhole. For instance, in something like this, there might be quite a sinkhole there if it isn't gated and risered properly. But this is a relatively thin wall casting, so there's not a problem with that kind of shrinkage. But the other shrinkage we talked about, I used a shrink rule because the overall dimensions of this will be smaller than the pattern, and I'm going to prove that to you right now. So taking a Brown and Sharp square with 2 heads on it, I've already adjusted this. Now I'm not measuring, I'm just comparing. So right across here, approximately perpendicular to the chute here, I brought that up, and it's a good fit. Now let's put the casting in there. In the same position. Look at the difference. So it would look like there's about 1/8 of an inch difference there. I'm not going to bother to measure it. And that would be true in every direction. So this would be smaller than the wooden pattern. So some of you might find that interesting. This is a page out of an older Starrett catalog, and they're describing the shrinkage rates here for different metals. They're selling shrink rules on this page, but you can see there the shrink rate for the various metals. Some are very similar. Copper and aluminum are about the same, but that's where I got the 3/16 of an inch of shrink per foot. Thought you'd find that interesting. So What I'm going to do now off camera is to saw this closer and do a little bit of filing. Notice that I positioned the gates in spots that will not matter. For instance, I don't need to spend a lot of time cleaning this up, so I'll just saw it and file it a little bit, but that's going to be in the bottom position. Never seen by anyone. This one, I really don't even need to do anything to it because this is going to be the opening for the wheel. So give a little thought to where you're going to put the gates and the risers and all of that that may or may not help you. That needs to be filed just a little bit. I told you I should have filled that. But, you know, once you do a long project, you start taking shortcuts. I don't know if you're like me on that, but probably half-stepped a little bit near the end. Okay, that concludes this part 3 of this grinder series. I'll see you in the next part, which is going to be the finishing off of this, the drilling, the sawing, and I need to make the cover yet too. So that'll be a pattern, but a very simple flat back pattern that I can do in my spare time. It's not a challenge. This was a little bit of a challenge, and you know, a lot of thought had to be put into this. In fact, I worked on this on and off for a full week. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter or episode of this series. This is tubalcain.